TCU's improved over the last few weeks, but Baylor showed tonight a major weakness that still has to be addressed, and that's the Frogs are really bad up front on both sides of the ball. We'll talk about it next year on Locked On Horned Frogs, our post-game show after TCU fell to Baylor 37-34 tonight.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're doing a live post-game show. TCU is now 5-4 and 3-3 in conference play after falling to Baylor on the road, 37-34. I'm not sure how you guys feel. I'm seeing some of the comments come in, and a lot of you have the same feelings I have. This team is getting bullied up front. Logan Thompson says the O-line is the main issue. They were a huge issue tonight. Someone said my girlfriend is a Baylor fan. I'm making her a sandwich now. I feel your pain, brother. I got a lot of friends and family that are Baylor people too, and I've had a good 4 years of talking noise that's about to come back down on me in a big way. But my two takeaways from this game, I'm obviously frustrated. I mean, I don't feel like this was a sky is falling type of loss, but not to discount what happened. Hear me out. You lose on the road to a Baylor team that's improving. I don't think that's the end of the world. The issue for me is the thing that leaves a bad taste in my mouth. This was a winnable football game. Like, it was there for the taking. They had their opportunities. They had chances to make big plays. Man, it was tough. So that 4th and 9 they gave up was big. But my main two takeaways from this ball game. One, Baylor is better in the trenches. This week I talked a lot about how these two schools are similar. These two programs are very similar. And they're kind of at a similar place. They now have an identical record. Both coaches were facing a lot of heat, and they kind of turned the tide a little bit by winning a few big games. Dave Aranda continues to turn the tide by winning a big game against TCU, which he's never done in his tenure at Baylor. He is 1-4 now against the Frogs, but he got it done tonight. And the thing that stood out to me, TCU just got destroyed up front. I mean, they got bullied up front by this Baylor offense and defensive line. And Baylor's O-line, they brought in a lot of transfers like TCU did. And they took their lumps early in the season, but they figured it out, and they seem to be playing better football right now. TCU's offensive line, I mean, they can still throw the ball, and they do some good things on offense. They scored 34 points tonight. But they cannot run the football in the traditional way. They run the football pretty well with Savion Williams and this Wildcat formation. They added some new wrinkles to that tonight that I thought were intriguing. They had the pass touchdown to Jack Besh. That was a great call on 4th and 2. But they get no push from the interior offensive line. The run stats tonight for Baylor. Savion had 8 carries for 57 yards. Jeremy Payne, 7 carries, 21 yards. Trent Battle, 6 carries, 18 yards. Josh Hoover, 7 for 7. J.P. Richardson, 1 for 3. Cam Cook, 3 rushes, -1 yards. They have no ability to run the ball in the traditional fashion. And that was a huge difference in this game. Also, in the passing game, Baylor kept bringing the same A-gap pressure. It was different variations of it. But they were coming through that A-gap over and over and over again. Sometimes it was Matt Jones coming through. Sometimes it was a nose guard. But James Brockermeyer and Colton Deary and Strickland and Bruno, they had no idea how to pass those blitzes off. Which, to me, that's a coaching issue. I saw Marshall Newhouse. Actually, I guess I should just pull up the tweet since I have it in front of me. Marshall Newhouse, longtime NFL lineman, obviously had a great career at TCU. And I believe he's been doing the color commentary on the radio for most of the season. I don't know if he did it tonight. But he said that it feels like other teams in this conference know TCU's protection rules. Like, they're coming at it and they know exactly how TCU's going to protect certain pressures and certain blitzes. Colton Deary had a rough night. I mean, he was just getting beat across his face a lot by these defensive tackles that Baylor had. James Brockermeyer had a tough night. Somebody says he left his man unblocked like 3 times. Yeah, he had a rough night in protection up front. And I get it. One thing that I know about offensive line play is continuity is huge. You have to have 5 guys moving in concert, understanding, communicating well, all that. That being said, it's really tough to look at what A.J. Ricker's done over the last 2 years and say that he's done a good job. Like, this O-line is going on a second straight season where they're a complete mess. And honestly, I think they're worse this year. Amani Bailey had 1,000 yards last year. They had their struggles last season. Don't get me wrong. But they could run the ball in certain situations. They have no ability to run the ball outside of gimmicky type stuff in the Wildcat formation. The other thing on the D-line, I mean, they just got shoved around tonight. I think I butchered his name earlier in the week. So let me get it right. Bryson Washington, because he deserves it because he owned TCU tonight. Bryson Washington, who's from Franklin, Texas. Franklin runs the slot T. That's your fun fact about Texas high school football tonight. And they do a really good job running the ball. He has stepped up. You know, I said Sawyer Robertson was kind of the key cog here, and I think he's a huge part of it. But another part of it for Baylor is Dominic Richardson was their running back to start the season. Washington's been plugged in because of some injuries. And then they have Pendergrass that they can use in short yardage in red zone. But Washington's been outstanding. He had 4 touchdowns tonight, and he just ran all over the TCU defense. I don't know. I'll try to see later on. I'm not sure what happened to Marcus Deal. I didn't see him on the field tonight. Hakeem Ajibaliba got hurt on the first possession of the ball game on defense on, I think, a 3rd and 1. And he's been playing well lately. He forced that fumble against Texas Tech last week. He's made a difference in the interior D-line. Once those 2 guys were out, and it was Caleb Fox and Timon Mitchell taking the lion's share of the snaps, it was trouble for TCU. And I think the worst insult you can give a football team is saying they are soft. That's just like kind of coming at the basic integrity of the sport when you say that. The front 7 for TCU was soft tonight. They just got blown off the ball. There was a short time midway through the second quarter into early in the third where they played at a high level, and they made some things happen. But the key turning point to me, TCU goes up 7. They went up 20-13 early in the third quarter. The defense got a stop. Devin Deal got a sack. They get a stop. They get the ball back. They go down. They kick a field goal. They take a 7-point lead. Baylor gets the ball back. They have 3rd and 10 deep in their own territory. And it's like, okay, if you can find a way to get off the field here, that would be huge. You get the ball back. I don't know if it's going to be in good field position, but you at least get the ball back with your offense having an opportunity to go down and score and make it a 14-point game, a 10-point game, or just melt some clock at least. An opportunity to go make it a 2-possession ball game. 3rd and 10 at Baylor 25. Sawyer Robertson just completes a really easy pass to Hal Presley. And I thought the coverage was soft on that play. It was just a very simple pitch and catch on 3rd and 10. And then Baylor got cooking on offense. And it was just run play after run play. They would throw, the screen past the boundary. And they did whatever they wanted. After that 3rd down conversion, TCU did not get a stop on defense the rest of the game. It was touchdown to tie it at 20. TCU comes back and responds. Baylor responds with another touchdown to tie it up at 27. TCU's offense finally blinks, and Jeremy Payne, goes down on a 3rd and 5. He gets 3 yards, but it's 4th and 2. They punt. Baylor goes down and scores again, 34-27. TCU scores to tie it. Baylor goes down and scores one more time. And plays that stood out to me. The touchdown run to tie it up at 27. Bryson Washington, I believe he took it in from like 30 yards out, but it was a simple run play. And that was a 5-play, 75-yard drive. I mean, just went through the TCU defense like a knife in hot butter, right? But from the TCU 35-yard line, he takes the carry. Lindgren gets combo blocked. Defensive tackle, Connor Lindgren gets combo blocked at the point of attack. He gets shoved out of the frame. Timon Mitchell gets kicked out to the outside. Nnamdi Obaizor comes down and just runs right into one of the Baylor offensive linemen and kind of flails his arms in desperation to get a holding call. And Washington just goes in untouched. I mean, there was no resistance at all. A lot of you are bringing up the 4th and 9 play. Yes, that was crazy. I mean, Baylor essentially trying to give the game over to TCU. They had 2nd and 9 or 2nd and 10. They run the ball to get to 3rd and 9. Javon McIvor, I think, makes a great play in a 1-for-1 situation. They called the defense, or they threw the flag for defense pass interference. They ended up picking it up. And I thought that was the right call. I thought it would have been a very weak pass interference call if they ended up sticking with it. But he makes a great play on the ball, breaks it up, forces 4th and 9. And Dave Aranda, to his credit, says, because the thing when you have a crappy defense, and Dave is generally kind of aggressive, but when you have a crappy defense, teams just feel like they can do whatever on you. Earlier in the game, they ran it on 3rd and 8 to get 4th and 3 because they knew if they got some positive yards on 3rd and 8, they were just going to go for it because they felt like they could convert, and they did. So Robertson takes a draw play up the middle. They convert on 4th and 3. A few plays later, they score a touchdown again to take the lead. But that 4th and 9, Caleb Larmsor comes on a blitz. He gets stuck in traffic. He can't get there. They run Trigg, the tight end, on a kind of delayed crossing pattern after I think Brock Osweiler was doing the game tonight. He pointed out that the receiver pushed vertically up the field, and that forced Obaizor into, making a decision. And once he turned his hips, they just ran Trigg right underneath him for that first down. But they convert on 4th and 9. And then maybe the play that was most mind-numbing to me, they get the 1st and 10, but it's still at like the TCU 30-yard line. And 47-yard field goal, I mean, that's certainly doable. But that's still a tough kick. And Baylor just hands the ball off to Bryson Washington in a very typical play that you see in those situations where you're just trying to get to the middle of the field. You're just trying to get a couple more yards, line up in the middle of the field so your kicker can kick the ball. They're going to call timeout with like 2 seconds left. And he just runs right through the TCU defense. Like, they get in that rugby scrum after about 4 yards, and the Baylor offensive line shoves him forward. And there's no resistance. My ring light fell there, sorry. There's no resistance. There's nobody to come in and make a play. And it's a 13-yard gain. Well, now suddenly it's a 33-yard field goal. That's a big difference. That takes a lot of pressure off Isaiah Hankins, the Baylor kicker, and he knocks it through the uprights and lets your ball game. So those critical moments were the key here. In these one-score games, which Matt Welker's talked about this, they're kind of like coin flips, and to a certain extent they are. But it comes down to you have to make plays in big moments. 3rd and 10 at the Baylor 25 with a 7-point lead. TCU defense couldn't get off the field. 3rd and 5 around midfield. Josh Hoover dumps it off to Jeremy Payne. He can't get a first down. Suddenly 4th and 2. Defense can't get a stop on 4th and 9 to force overtime. Those are the plays that change the ball game. And yes, people have mentioned it. The Savion drop on the touch. I mean, it would have been an easy touchdown. Would have been 14-7. And that was a huge turning point in the game. Now, I think ultimately Savion made up for it with the way he played throughout the ball game. But yeah, you got to talk about it. I mean, it's a mistake that you can't have. He was wide open. He bobbled it. He dropped it. It changed the complexion of the game to a certain extent. But TCU rallied and led at halftime. And they led for the majority of the third quarter. But ultimately, they just couldn't get stops. The offense finally stalled out. And the defense just kept getting gashed. Kevin says one positive thing is there were no turnovers today. Yeah, Josh did a good job protecting the ball. His final line was pretty solid. I'm trying to get the box score pulled up here. Sorry, bear with me. Josh's final line, 25-34, 333 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. I mean, he was efficient tonight. He didn't turn the ball over. So that was good. That was a positive. Logan Thompson asked me about the Josh Hoover. So there was like a play where Jeremy Payne was trying to get some extra yardage. His forward progress got stopped. The Baylor defenders shoved him back. They blew the whistles. The ball comes out. and a couple guys are fighting for it. Josh tries to jump in, and he gets shoved down. Are they going to call a late hit there? I don't know, maybe. But I'll be real with you. TCU caught some breaks with the officials tonight. I mean, there were two calls on that drive where they went down and took the lead. I think that was 27-20, where they took the lead on the Savion. Yeah, the Savion throw to Jack Bash for the touchdown. There was that unsportsmanlike conduct call after the Hoover sack that was pretty ticky-tack. And then the defensive holding penalty, I don't remember seeing a replay of that. But bottom line was TCU caught some breaks in this game from the officials, so I'm not really going to complain about it too much. They had their chances. They gave up 257 rushing yards tonight. Somebody said that's embarrassing. It is embarrassing. Somebody asked me for the 4th and 2 play. Should they have gone for it? Great question, Kevin. I'll be honest. In the moment when it was happening, I thought it was the right call. Now, one thing that was a killer there, Ethan Craw, the punter, he's really struggled in pinning people deep this year, and just kind of in general. But you're at your own 40, or no, I think you're there at the Baylor 48-yard line on 4th and 2. He put him at the 19. Like, that's not a huge difference in field position. You need to put him inside the 10 there. But in hindsight, which, hey, hindsight's 20/20, Sonny's making those decisions in real time. After the fact, I was like, man, probably should have gone for it. Just because, here's my thing about 4th down calls. I think you have to have a balance of the analytics chart, but I feel like, honestly, it's more about what's the game script going like. So if your defense is playing well, that's a scenario where you pump the ball and you say, hey, defense is playing solidly tonight. Let's trust them. They're going to make a play. Like the Utah game this year. I mean, there were multiple instances where TCU, in most cases, probably would have gone for it. But because the defense was playing at such a high level and because Utah's offense was so inept, they decided to go make it happen and pump the ball. But tonight, the way the defense was playing, I thought probably best to go for it there because they were just Swiss cheese in the second half. I mean, they were giving up big run after big run. There's a Baylor fan in the chat here. Welcome, Baylor Bear 03. Congratulations on going 2-8 against TCU in the last 10 years. I'm coping. He did say there were some high-level uncommitted recruits there. So, yeah, good for you guys. Winning on the big stage. I feel like if you think a head-to-head matchup like this is tipping the scales for those guys, I got a beach house to sell you in Waco, Texas. But a good win for the Bears tonight. And I think they're trending in the right direction. And the biggest concern for me, on a serious note, is I do feel like O-line and D-line play is the guts of your program. I've said it time and time again. You can't scheme around bad offensive line play. You can do it to a certain extent, but there's just like, if you're getting whipped up front, your front seven, your O-line, maybe depending on the matchup week to week, people can't exploit it. But when you play good teams or when you play physical teams, you're going to get your lunch ate. And that was the case tonight. And Baylor really, I mean, they ran the ball at will against Oklahoma State. They did the same thing tonight. And that was the difference in the ball game. Matt Welker says, with this staff for another year, do you feel like next year will be much different? Serious question. So I was going to save this for Monday, but I'll actually close the show with this question. I'm going to take a quick second to do an ad break, but it's a fair question, and I'll address it next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Shout out to our friends at FanDuel. If you get one $5 bet, if you hit on it, if you get one $5 bet right, then you get $150 in bonus bets. College football, NFL, NBA, NHL, everything is available to you. FanDuel, it's where the game starts, official betting partner of the NFL, and the proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. So Matt Welker just asked me, obviously, like after the Houston game, things were pretty dire, right? And somebody asked me point blank, man, I'm having issues with this tonight. There we go. Somebody asked me point blank after that Houston game, the post-game show, if I had to make a decision, if I would let Sonny go. And I was like, well, yeah, at this moment, I would say yes. I feel like he saved his job for 2025 with the way the team has improved lately. Now, there's still – we'll see what happens with the last 3 games, but I imagine that they're going to make a bowl game, and that'll be kind of the difference here. But he said, what do you think will change coming up in 2025? So I was actually thinking about this before the Baylor game. In 2020, TCU started the year 1-3. That was the COVID year. And actually the first podcast I ever did was after that Kansas State loss where Max Duggan got benched. I believe Matthew Downing was the quarterback that came in. He threw a pick 6. They lost by 7 points. They were a disaster on offense in the first half of the season, except for the Texas game, which they won. But then they ended up winning 5 of their last 6. They finished 6-4. They had a nice win against Oklahoma State at the end of the season. The other teams they beat in that run, Texas Tech, Kansas, Baylor, Louisiana Tech. And the big issue that year was they could not pass the football. They just couldn't throw the ball. They could run pretty well. They couldn't throw. And they didn't fix that much throughout the year. They played some bad teams that just, frankly, they could physically overwhelm. And they did a good job of doing that, executing those things. And at the end of the year, there was some optimism that, because when they were 1-3, there were some murmurs starting about maybe Gary doesn't have this figured out anymore. But they finished the season strongly, and there was talk about, well, hey, they finished the season really well. They got a lot of guys coming back. They got a lot to build on. 2022, they'll be improved. Well, we all know what happened, in 2021, they'll be improved. We all know what happened in 2021. They struggled. They got out of the gate slow. They lost to SMU. Things went downhill. Gary gets let go. And ultimately, they weren't able to solve the issues that they had. It was just masked by an easier schedule and winning some games that they were favored in. And one nice win against Oklahoma State. But they still couldn't throw the ball well. The offense was still a mess. They had identity issues on offense. And the problems were still there. When they played better teams, they got exposed again. So my concern right now is I do think they are playing better at the moment. I think they're executing a little bit better. I feel like they're playing cleaner football. The effort is improved. But I don't really know at this point what they have solved as far as the issues on this team that have been a through line throughout the year. They still can't run the ball. They found some creative ways to go about it that have helped them out, but they can't run the ball. They're still struggling on the D-line. Now, I do think Marcus Deal being back, Hakeem possibly being back, I'm not sure what his eligibility situation is. I need to look at that. Paul Wale coming back from injury. I feel like there's some guys there that could improve that defensive line. I think, Matt, from the O-line perspective, what you're banking on is just continuity helping you out. You're going to lose Bless Harris, and at this point, I don't know who's going to play tackle for you. I guess Ben Taylor Whitfield would be the person that would get the first shot, but he struggled. So that means you're most likely going in the portal, and going in the portal for a tackle is expensive. So yeah, I think the optimism would be that continuity and returning production would help you. But I don't know what's going to change as far as the identity of the team, other than maybe the defense gets significantly better, because I do think Andy Avalos has some good ideas. It's just about personnel. Matt says, is Avalos talented enough to coach in this league? Well, fair question. I mean, he was talented enough to coach at Oregon, but as Matt has pointed out multiple times, he also had some really good players at Oregon. He had the top of the talent there in the Pac-12. Matt also asked me, how can an O-line pass protect well but not run the ball well? So my thoughts on that are, I think pass blocking and run blocking are two different things. Pass blocking is in my mind easier. You're not having to worry about getting somebody off the ball and just knocking someone off the line of scrimmage. It's more about, okay, how quick are your feet? How good is your foundation? Can you use your hands effectively? Can you keep guys off your quarterback, and he gets to move around the pocket a little bit. Run blocking, you have to knock people off the ball. And TCU doesn't do that well. And honestly, I'm not sure if it's a scheme thing or if it's just they struggle with it, but it feels like a lot of times they're just trying to do what I would call influence blocking, which means it's not so much about moving people off the ball. It's more like, let me try to get to this guy's outside shoulder and turn him around and hook him so my player can run past me. Let me try to blow this guy the other way. Like if he's coming this way, like if we're running to the right, let me try to just kind of wash him down to the left so that there's a lane there. And even with that, they struggle to do that. And I've talked to people who know football better than me that have questions about that type of blocking scheme and how effective it can truly be. I also think the lack of mobility from Josh is a problem. He did run the ball a little bit better tonight. But I think a big part of Kendall's offense is having the quarterback, accounting for him in the math of the run game, and that making a huge difference in what they're doing. And right now, it's just not a factor. So, yeah, I guess I would say I'm skeptical that a lot of things would change next year. And I feel like it's going to be a prove-it year for the coaching staff and for these players, and we'll see how it plays out. Joe asked, where was Marcel Brooks tonight? Was he injured? I saw him on the field a couple times. I have to look at the snap count stuff to see how much he played. He also asked why he wasn't on the field in 4th and 9. Yeah, I can't answer that. I mean, you would like to have his pass rushing ability for sure. That's a situation where you want to heat up Sawyer Robertson. And they did bring Caleb Alarmzor on the blitz. He just couldn't get there, and they threw behind him and got a first down. So, tough loss tonight for TCU. They are now 5-4 and 3-3 in conference play. And this was a big loss because, I mean, I'm not delusional. I don't think they really had a chance to do anything as far as the Big 12 championship race went. With Iowa State and Kansas State losing, if they could have won tonight, they would at least given themselves an opportunity to, keep moving up in the standings and maybe allow some chaos to happen. So that's all off the table now. You got to regroup and play Oklahoma State this week. Then you get a bye week and you get Arizona. And we'll see where they go from here. But, yeah, tough loss for the Frogs. Actually, I guess before we go, let me see if we have anything significant from Sonny here in the postgame presser. Any updates of note? Coach Dyke says he thinks Baylor coached better down the stretch than TCU did. Sonny's sometimes a little bit too honest. Okay, well, that's good to know. I would agree with him. I thought Baylor coached better as well. I thought they were more aggressive. I thought David Aranda played to win tonight, and Sonny, in some certain instances, kind of played to lose. He also said that they were wore down with injuries to Marcus Steele and Akeem, and yeah, that was a big factor. Not having those guys on the defensive line was a problem tonight. They missed those dudes. He also said he wished he would have gone for it in 4th down in hindsight. So Stephen Johnson from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram transcribing those quotes. Appreciate him. Yeah, I mean, that's the ball game, right? I think ultimately, though, my big thing is you got to get better up front. And I don't have great and clear answers for that because that's a tough thing to do. And I think you can find there's a thought process now, and I've seen some people write articles on it, that you can't build an offensive line in the portal. I don't think you can build your entire offensive line in the portal. I think if you need a guard, if you need a tackle, you can go get one guy, maybe go get 2 guys, but you need continuity up front. You need guys that you are building within your system, and TCU doesn't have that right now. And if they don't have that next year, then it starts to really call into question this coaching staff because this will be year 3 of development process. You should start to see some of these young players on the O-line be at a place physically where they can play. We'll be back on Monday with more coverage. Hey, I'm here. I appreciate you guys rocking with me on the postgame show. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for tuning in. This is Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast.